Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In this video, I want to talk about what is my most impactful testimony. And as I reflect off of this question, I can't help but think about several testimonies that I can contest of, which is my SMA is one big. I have a testimony with my SMA. I have a testimony when it comes to back surgeries. I have a testimony when it comes to procedures. I have a testimony when it comes to Spinraza injections. A testimony when it comes to my mental health. I have a variety of different testimonies that I can talk about. In this video in particular, I want to talk about three testimonies, which is my primary testimony, which is my SMA. I say my SMA, I have a testimony for that is because despite the challenges that I go through, despite the obstacles, the hurdles, the challenges, the heartaches, even the pain that SMA can often bring me, is I still find a way to keep going. I still find a way to show up. I still find a way to stay positive throughout it all. It's not the easiest thing to stay positive. It's not the easiest thing to, smile when you're going through so much turmoil, and it's not so easy to stay positive when all you see is immense pain. All you see is adversity. All you see is chaos. It's not the easiest thing to do. And despite that, you may see me outdoors, and despite that, you may see me smile or be this most uplifting person that you may come across is behind closed doors, behind the camera, behind closed doors, behind the scenes, there's always someone who is still trying. There's always someone who is still trying to smile, and it's not so much about putting up a front or anything. It's simply just I try my absolute best not to let my inner world affect my outer world, because I believe that every single individual is going through some form of adversity. Of course, there are there are others who are going through more turbulent life paths than you, right? But, I try to focus more on my blessings. And I think one thing my SMA has really taught me, especially living in and out of the hospital at such a young age, is you always find that there is always somebody that has it worse. And you shouldn't let it and as I say that, I don't want you to downgrade or devalue what it is that you are going through. Like it's not that bad. I don't want to come across as that individual, but I do want to enlighten you a little bit, to pull away your focus from so much of everything that you are going through, but also understand there is somebody going through much worse than you. And I learned very early on, living in the hospital, especially in the ICU or in the hospital in general, despite me going through my back surgeries, despite me going through ammonia and collapsed lungs or whatever it was that I was going through, hearing little ones cry, screaming, some of them even screaming for their parents, and their parents are not around. It really, really shows you to focus on your blessings rather than your problems. There's always somebody that always has it worse, despite what it is you go through. And in knowing that is I find enlightenment in knowing that somebody else has it worse, because I feel like it can pull you away from self pity and help you remain resilient and push through what it is you're going through. Another testimony, I would say my back surgeries. My back surgery at the age of 11 years old, for those of you that don't know, was I have severe sclerosis. And at the age of 11, I had developed severe sclerosis, where my sclerosis, the curvature of my spine, was starting to impact my daily life. It started to impact my health. And because of that, as a result, I needed a spinal fusion, which is they essentially put me to sleep through anesthesia, and I don't want to get too detailed, but they open up your back and they instill metal rods drilled into your spine to help you sit straighter. So, to help improve overall quality of life. And for me, unfortunately, it wasn't successful. It was unsuccessful. And I shortly later needed a spinal debridement, where I ended up catching a severe infection that left me going in and out of the OR for I was in the hospital for 2.5 months during this phase, and in and out Monday through Friday, going in and out of the OR operating room. I'm not exaggerating. And one of those surgeries was just 14 hours. But a testimony to that is, despite the pain that I was going through, despite the obviously the mental challenge and the takeaways, the things that I missed within the process because I wasn't home, it really can take a negative toll on you. For example, I missed my older brother's high school graduation. That's a once in a lifetime thing where I unfortunately was in the hospital at that time, so I happened to miss it. You miss moments, and it's not the easiest thing to kind of understand or accept, especially when you're young, right? But a testimony to that is, despite the pain, literally physical pain, and also, as you can imagine, the emotional turmoil that it can bring upon a young individual, I still found a way to push through. I still found a way to smile through the process. I still found a way to be positive and stay optimistic throughout, despite how everything I was going through, despite everything that I was going through, and despite how I was feeling, I still found a way to smile and push through and persevere, endure it, to say the least. And another thing that I want to talk about too, which is, like my third testimony, is my mental health battle. Despite reflecting off of my life and going through, living with SMA. My SMA is progressive. It's progressive. So my me talking about progression, being able to do one thing one day to the next, not being able to do it, or being able to do something yesterday to waking up today, where you have the knowledge that, or the awareness that what it was you were able to do yesterday is slowly slipping away from you today. It's not the easiest thing to endure. It's not the easiest thing to have to accept, living with a progressive disability. So the reason why I brought up my SMA again is because, with my SMA, hospitalization experiences, not just with my back, but, having ammonia, collapsed lungs throughout nearly 50, probably if not more, percent of my life, of my entire life. And living in the hospital is not the easiest thing. And as you can imagine, it definitely takes a mental toll. It definitely takes a, a spiritual toll as well. You're going through so much adversity, and you often question, why me, or why is this happening, or why am I going through this? When I say it's not the easiest thing, it's not the easiest thing to have to endure through. And my mental health battle is, living this story that I have lived, that I continue to live, right? Because I continue to show up for myself, and I continue to show up regardless of how I'm feeling, and I try to stay positive through the entire process. It's obviously not the easiest thing, but two, I want to highlight that as you go through all of these turmoils and traumatic events, even, it definitely takes an emotional, mental, and spiritual toll in the most negative way possible. And I learned, by me going through what I was going through, I ended up entering entrepreneurship. And as you can imagine, I took on the role of entrepreneurship by choice, right? I dropped out of community college. And during this process, I'm still undergoing personal things, within my personal home life. And there was so much happening within my personal life that, again, despite despite you and I cross paths, and, you see me smile, you see me with uplifting, positive energy, you see me being so positive, again, behind closed doors, there's somebody trying. And I wanted to mention that as well again, because, for so long I was just going through so much adversity, where i happened to I happened to break. And, it was the ugliest experience that I happened to go through. Personal life, everything was falling apart. Professional life, nothing was going well. Where I thought my business was going to go, where I seen the timeline that I had set for myself to be in my entrepreneurial journey, did not happen. It was just like loss after loss, adversity after adversity. It was like fail after failure, failure after failure. There was just like so many different things going on. and literally my entire world started to collapse. And it wasn't, despite me trying to stay positive and trying to endure the process, I happened to break. And this experience left me going down a psychiatric hold where it was a very ugly experience where I was placed on a psychiatric hold. And when I say an ugly experience, I mean it was a very ugly experience. And getting through that alone was not the easiest thing. To go on a psychiatric hold, like let me give you a visual understanding, is to go from one day to the next, where you're trying to stay positive, you're trying to smile, you're still trying to hold yourself together, to like one day, I call it the enemy within, is like, why are you trying so much? Why are you doing this anymore? Why are you here? Why do you keep fighting? And the enemy within finally, becomes that loud voice, the ugly, it lets the ugly out. And you lash out, and you're on a psychiatric hold. The enemy within takes power over you. That light that you once held on to no longer exists. I went through that. To come across as a person who seems to have it all together, seems to always be positive, that person broke. And I don't share this with you for self pity. I share this with you because I want you to understand that although just because somebody is smiling, or although just because somebody may come across as positive all the time, it is a person just like you, trying to hold it all together, trying to show up for themselves, trying to push through despite every single thing that they are going through, both in front and behind the scenes. Going through this process, I was on a psychiatric hold January 2020 to being on antidepressants, several forms of medications for my mental health. And I didn't like the way I was feeling. To shortly after, I found a way to, there was some form of divine intervention of experience within that psychiatric hold. And till this day, I can't really put into words, but there was some form of divine intervention of an experience where I genuinely can say Jesus saved my life. Like, it wasn't a book, it wasn't a cross. Like, literally, I was sedated for 4 days because they were trying to figure out what was going on. And, within those 4 days, it was just like I woke up and literally Jesus saved my life. I can't explain it, but ever since then, I just really started building a connection. I just became instantly close with Jesus, which was interesting when I reflect on it, and profound of an experience. And I began building. I began to I began to have Jesus as my guide, and I began to develop a profound connection with God, the Most High, the Divine, I call him, the universe. And I began developing a stronger connection with the Most High, which is God. And I began to understand the importance of forgiveness, mercy, love, unconditional love, when it comes to Jesus. And um, I wanted to mention that as well because, again, going from somebody who is always positive and smiling, on to go from somebody who is like always smiling and positive to, one day to the next, like, what's going on here? He's on a psychiatric hold. And um, going through this ugly experience is, again, I was taking, this all happened January 2020. I was on mental health medication, antidepressants, of a list of medications. I didn't like the way I was feeling. But again, there was some form of divine intervention of an experience where, after I was taking these medications for a few weeks, that light that began to spark within the darkest moments of my life began to get brighter and brighter and brighter, where it became just enough light for me where I was like, I'm not taking these medications anymore. I don't like the way I'm feeling. I don't feel like it is needed. I am going to do what uncommonly and arguably is I'm going to stop taking them and I'm going to do what I feel is best for me, which is staying connected to my God, staying connected, building a life where, I can utilize this ugly experience and turn it into something positive. I'm going to, instead of me focusing so much on the dark, I'm going to begin to see how I can continue to grow this light. And the more that I began to focus on Jesus, the more that I began to read his words, the more I began to understand God's philosophy, was the more that light began to get brighter and brighter and brighter, to the point where I did get off of those mental health medications. Despite everything that I was going through, I still showed up for myself. I found a way to grow the light. I found a way to understand darkness. So that way, when light began to crack through this fortified wall, I wasn't afraid to understand my darkness so I can utilize that light that began to crack through, helping me get through every single thing that I was going through. And it was this moment where I began to realize God doesn't take you to hard times, He guides you through it. It is the enemy. I call it the enemy within. But spiritually speaking, you could say the devil. The devil does its absolute best to keep you in darkness, to feed you so many lies as to why you cannot get through what it is you're going through. And the thing I learned is that why would the enemy try so long, so hard, if there was nothing great on the other side of what you are going through? It is because you have so much potential. You have a divine gift that the enemy doesn't want you to see. It doesn't want you to experience. But it is God that not only helps you prevail, but it is God that brings you the infinite abundance of divine light. So no matter the dark valleys you go through, no matter the darkness that continues to lurk around you, you keep God first. You keep God close. So from me to you, build your relationship with God. Continue to put one foot in front of the other. And most importantly, please do not stop smiling when life gets tough, because it will get tough. Stay positive within the process. Endure what you must. And keep the faith through the good, the bad, and the ugly. I love you. I appreciate you. And remember, grow through what you go through. Much love.